Let's manual swap this €350 beat up E39, which I got for next to nothing because of this very broken automatic gearbox. But first, we do have to put it in the air because I haven't even inspected it from underneath, and there's really no need to spend a lot of time if there's rust holes this big. So yeah. Now that we've got this thing in the air, well, the brakes are rusted solid, or very rusted, but there's no play, I think. No play. Also no play. Also, we do have almost new Toyo winter tires on board, which is always nice. I think these have like a good 5-6 mils left of life. Plenty for a winter beater. That's a pretty solid deal if you got almost new tires with €350 cars. That's great. The lower right sill of the car at the front is, I believe, the most common E39 rust spot. Here it's just starting because the windshield washer pump sits right behind here, traps all the moisture and dirt, and yeah, it's wet 24/7, so it rusts. Right here, it's just starting. If the car treats me well, I'll even take care of that little car cancer we have growing right here and right here in the wheel arch. I did take a few moments to snoop around the car, and it's not too bad. There's no big rust holes. All the jacking points still support the weight, also the one where the internal structure has been removed by the previous owner. But every rust spot passes the screwdriver test, so I don't think this car will have struggles passing technical inspection. After we swap it, of course, because there's lots of warning lights. And it will make for a good driver / winter car, because the cars that will be saved, that question has been answered a long time ago, and cars like this, with many kilometers, living in Germany for all its life, with rust starting everywhere, well, they maybe have like a good 10 years left, if they find people like me who are willing to put in a bit of time and money. But yeah, most of them get scrapped. So pick one cheap beater and save it. You can clearly see that rust has creeped up all the way until the top part of the threads on these bolts. Just like that. And as everybody knows, drive shafts have different lengths, different widths, different bolt patterns, different bolt distances. Everything is different between models. If you have a bigger model, it's going to be different than a smaller model. Automatic ones are usually shorter than manual ones, and so on and so on. But through pure luck, I found compatibility between an E46 320i gearbox 5-speed, which I picked up with the flywheel, and a usable clutch and pressure plate for $80, a manual prop shaft from a 520i manual with the small flange right here that fits into the gearbox from the E46 320i, and the same bolt pattern to the diff between a 523 automatic and a 520 manual drive shaft. Yeah, quite a few dimensions to keep in mind. As you can see, the one from the 520 is quite a bit longer than the one from the 523 automatic, and the one from the 523 automatic has a way larger bolt pattern than the one from the 520. But we won't be caring about that, because swapping it this way allows me to keep the original diff and axle shafts, which means I can save a lot of money. I bought the gearbox for $80 with the flywheel and everything, which I need for the swap anyways, and the prop shaft was $180, which was expensive, but only because I had it shipped. The other thing we need is a paddle box. That seller was a massive douche, and I couldn't get it for under 200, so I paid like 195 shipped. Yeah, expensive. Now almost everything is out for the gearbox to come out, but on a manual car things would be really easy. Just undo all the bolts, one reverse light and the shifter linkage, and you're set. Right here we can't forget that we still have lines for a heat exchanger. I had to undo the shifter linkage. Then there was one plug at the rear of the gearbox, another one at the front of the gearbox, and then right there we have two lines that I already undid, but the block of plate is still keeping them in place. So now we'll undo these and let all the ATF drain. And another thing we had to undo was the lines going to the gearbox from the cooler at the front. I've just cut them in two, we won't be needing them anyways. That way I can just pull them out towards the rear of the car, and then I have a smoother uninstall of the gearbox. I also had to undo one single bolt on the block, which was holding the lines to the block. Something I have also just noticed working on this gearbox swap is that working on an E39 is incredibly easy. I have just removed the starter bolts and the top two bolts from the gearbox all the way from here. That's impossible on an E46. So that's quite a welcome change of things, and for sure saved me quite a bit of headache. But yeah, I also had to undo the 3 torque converter bolts. There's one access hole. On American cars, or the things I've seen in videos on American cars, it's very easy to do from underneath. On this car, you have to go under the cats where there's an inspection hole. Quite a bit more tricky, but got it done. It's only 3 bolts. Took me 20-ish minutes. Terrible, but we did it. The gearbox was extremely heavy. And now that everything from the transmission has been removed under the car, we can start removing the shifter and all the electronics related to the automatic. Okay, the whole operation took me a bit more time than anticipated. The one cable that locks the cylinder, you can undo it from underneath. There's just a pin and you have to slide the cable off, and then you have to go under the car and then undo the bracket that sits right here, and then you can just throw the automatic garbage out. And in place of the whole automatic garbage, we now install this chassis mounted shifter, which I have left over from the E46 project. It fits, which means it's free because I already spent the money. Continuing with the input shaft, an automatic gearbox does not need a pilot bearing, which is exactly why we need to retrofit this one into the crankshaft. I was convinced that I had one lying around. Well, I tried finding it and I couldn't, so I either misplaced it or already used it. So the one we'll install right here is a good used unit from a spare engine I had lying around. And because I was sick and tired of always destroying my hands counter holding the flywheel, yeah, I 3D printed a locking tool, which I hope works as well as I imagine it to do. Amazing. When it comes to the throwout bearing, I will install a new one, mainly because I have 3 lying around and the old one was already making a ton of noise and is very broken. So a new one's going in. And here we have the new gearbox, which is very light, so I can just lift it in. With the gearbox and shifter in, I noticed that our shifting linkage was too short, so I've cut it and took an old dipstick I had lying around and cut the perfect length to where we can now weld it, and it should work perfectly. The shift knob was from the old E46 project, so it was cheaper to throw that in there than to buy the whole stock mechanism. Side by side you can see the different in size on the brake pedals, and I bought the whole assembly because you need the clutch switch, everything. Unfortunately I got one from an early version 523, so I did have to order some more parts. Also the mounting spot was very rusted. When it comes to routing the line for the clutch, there's a pre-made hole in the firewall you just have to punch out. Mounting the clutch line is quite easy. Just chop off the big plug and then you can mount the line to the bigger stud. There's also a pre-made hole in the floor where you can route the line towards the slave cylinder. Because we still have the cable loom hanging around underneath the car, I'll pull that up. In this cable box, I don't know exactly where they're coming out from, but we have an automatic transmission module, which should be right here. And yeah, we also have to do some other cable adaptations, which is why we have to rip out a lot of cabling. I also just had a look through my cabling box from swap packs I bought and stuff. And right here, still have from a 323 E46, the whole loom with the lambda connectors and the reverse light switch. And then I can use this blue and green cable, which was pinned right there. It's the only blue and green cable on this plug. It comes from the big blue connector from the gearbox module, and that goes to the kickdown switch, which is this thing right here. It's a single wire physical switch for the MS42 powered cars. And that cable comes out over here where its location was, and then I can splice that into the connector number 25 right here. Excuse my stupidity, the pin I was talking about on the gearbox connector for the module, it's the wrong one. I checked if I got continuity with a wire I led. Obviously we didn't have continuity because I chose the wrong cable. I went off the cable from the videos I found, but the videos had different modules, so of course they're different. I did find continuity, not on this wire, but the one 3 over, so 31, 32, 33, 34 this time. And it is this brown and black wire. As you can see, we do have continuity on that one. It's not perfect, but that's because I'm just playing around with the pins hands loose. So yeah, we have to cut this wire and then we can solder everything. To get ground, I once again use my multimeter to backtrack it to the green cable. So there's 3 brown cables, so I'll cut this one, dang. And then just wire it around and check on the strut tower. And we do have ground right there, so I can use that. So right now we have power that will go to the cluster on the orange one and ground on the green one that I still have to cut. And now we just have to run pin to the instrument cluster on the blue plug pin 25 if I'm not mistaken, and then to the orange one, which is coming out at the kickdown switch. Now that we've rearranged the gearbox harness, I plugged everything in, and to test it, we can hook up the cable to the kickdown switch, go look for ground on the strut tower, and we have no connection. And then we can put it in reverse. And then we go looking for ground again. Yes, everything works like a charm. 0.00 run ohms resistance. Great. I have taken apart the blue plug and installed this wire right here, which I've taken the pin off from the shift command center or whatever it's called. The pin is too big, but I jammed it in there. It should make contact. It is beyond my understanding why BMW would take smaller pins for one type of connector than literally the rest of the car. They are kind of known for stupid decisions, but now we can route this through the dash and to our harness that we made beforehand. And that's basically everything for the E39. There was still a part where I had to do all the other wiring for the clutch switch that is needed for it to run, because one of the wires goes to the EWS and otherwise it won't run. Yeah, that's just how it is. And for the rest, the car should actually be sold. It's now a running and driving vehicle without codes. The swap should be good. Everything works, only original pieces were used. In the beginning I did weld up a gearbox bracket myself, which I later ditched for an original one which I bought for like 35 bucks. Yeah, The guy I'm selling it now to is a friend of mine, so I don't want him to have any issues, which is why I went the extra mile to do a few extra things so that there's nothing that's annoying to him. I did repaint the brake lines because it was starting to rust in one spot. I did replace most of the bulbs at the rear because they weren't working, and I did some other things here and there, so it should be good. This also wasn't supposed to be a how-to video. I really hate electrical work. The whole manual swap was just a preparation for a future E46 M3 manual swap I want to do, because SMG cars are quite a lot cheaper than factory manual coupes, so I want to do everything myself. This was a nice little insight. And in the next episode, you can see me start working on the brand new to the collection E32 750i, finished in Calypso Red Metallic. Beautiful spec.